end. Yep, thank you. We've reached the end of this process, the development of the strategies and tactics for the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan sports sector. So congratulations. It's been a lot of work and a lot of planning. I want to thank Bill Brandmeier and Adrian Roberson for their leadership throughout this process. They did a lot of work before we started meeting publicly. And of course, they have provided a ton of leadership in these meetings. So big kudos to them for all their help with this. So here's what we've got planned for today's meeting. First things first is Bryce and I were going through our notes last week, and we realized we actually forgot to vote on the tactics for strategy 1. And so we are going to do that voting to start off. Then we're going to review the draft plan of the sports sector. And then we'll talk about next steps. And of course, then we all will, as we always do, we'll finish up with just any announcements or updates that you guys want to share with the rest of the group. Bryce, do you want to put up the strategy 1 tactics for us to rank?
Let's do it. So just a review of strategy 1. I know it's been a while since we've gone through strategy 1, probably a couple months here. You could see where it fell in the overall voting as far as implementation locally and then its ability to improve health. This is what you guys thought. Kind of in the midway through where the rest of the strategy voting was. So just take that into consideration. And then a review of what the strategy is. Sports organizations should collaborate to establish a regional policy that emphasizes the importance of sports as a vehicle for promoting and sustaining a physically active population. So we're going to vote on the tactics today. So here are the tactics for strategy 1. If you guys want to pull up your phones again, you can go to menti.com. You might already have it open in your browser. If not, you can follow the code up at the top here. Make sure you enter that because we want everybody to be involved in this voting process. So these are the 3 tactics. You can start with 1, go on to 2, and then 3, and you're going to rank them on a, a 5-point scale. So you guys can go through those, and then we can talk about where you think each of these should be ranked for not a priority or an essential priority.
Yeah, so this strategy is all about kind of policy and regional policy. As Bryce said, it was kind of a middle of the road ranked strategy. And the tactics are all around the specifics of creating a policy. So building support for a regional policy by increasing awareness among stakeholders, like something here, engaging public agencies and private organizations to develop a regional policy. And the last one is identify an organization, either public or private, that will house a regional policy on sport. And I'll just say anecdotally, policy, even though it was ranked kind of middle of the road I was reviewing the National Youth Sports Strategy Kansas City workshop, and kind of regional policy, again, was not ranked very high, but it came up in almost every discussion that was being made. So while it may not be ranked particularly high, I think it does steep itself into lots of other areas. And so understanding how a policy might be developed, I think is important.
All right, so it looks like the one that rose to the top was engagement of public agencies and private organizations from multiple sectors in development of a regional policy on sport. And then behind that was building support for the development of a regional policy on sport by increasing awareness. in these stakeholders. And the lowest one was identifying an organization, either public or private, that will house the regional policy and support. So we'll get some additional, I guess if you guys have any additional conversation on which one, or any reasoning as to why you think that a certain one rose to the top. It looks like the engagement of public agencies and private organizations for the development of the regional policy on sport. So developing this regional policy sounds like it was at the forefront of most of your guys' minds. So that would have been tactic 2. And then Robin, I know we've talked about some of the objectives specifically under these tactics, which were taken from the national plan. We haven't considered those in the past for tactics, but we did add those recently. So this can give you, some additional perspective on this tactic ranking.
Yeah, I guess maybe one way to kind of guide our discussion would be to talk about whether these tactics need to be modified for the Kansas City region, if there's anything region specific that we need to think about, or if this is already being done in our region. And I think my understanding throughout the conversations that we've had here, and then in the National Youth Sports Strategy Kansas City workshop, that it doesn't seem that this work is being done at all in our region. Things are very fragmented, is kind of my perception of the environment. In terms of like policy.
And I'll just add what I have discussed with Jessica Blueblau from Win for KC and the Kansas City Sports Commission is forming a Kansas City Youth Sports Alliance of some type. But what we went into when we talked about the National Youth Sports Strategy was how do we put out, clear and strong guidance around youth sports, given the current climate that we're in and the sense of chaos that's out there. That I've heard youth sports been described as the wild, wild west in terms of its rules and regulations. There are none. And is there a way to incentivize organizations that provide sports for kids with incentives of some kind through either breaks in insurance or other types of incentives that would help them adopt a region-wide policy and help and guidance from a governing body of some type, or at least a collaborative work group like ours. Does that help or hurt? I don't even know if I'm helping.
I think I would just add to that, so I think the answer to the first question is yes, it needs to be tailored for a region. And I think, Bill, to add to what you're saying in terms of is it already being done, and speaking to like the conversations we've had, and I don't know how we solve this because I don't even know that a youth sports alliance is going to fix this, but like I had a conversation yesterday with Nancy Dorsey, who's the volleyball coach at St. James Academy, as an example, and she is serving on the board for AVA, which is an amateur volleyball association. And they're trying to convene all of the national governing bodies around volleyball, of which there are like 10, because they can't get even an alliance around all of them on like shortening the season and like not playing 9 months out of the year. So I think there's some stuff that we will have to either sync up if we get to this point, right, where we have a regional governing body. We're going to have to figure out how to sync up with the national governing bodies of these other sports, or the individual sports agencies and associations.
And I'll add a little flavor to that, Jessica. There was an announcement last week from Equity Sports Coalition that was formed during COVID, and they put out a guidance that was signed by Tom Ferry from Aspen Institute. I think I sent it to you, Bryce, and Robin, but they put out a guidance. And then there's a Bill of Rights that the Aspen Institute has put out there. If we had a collaborative group working on this, we could distribute that regionally and try to get those national discussions brought into a local, group. But there are those national discussions going on. There's probably one going on for soccer. There's probably one going on for volleyball and for flag football and for all the other sports too. These national discussions are all kind of centered around the same thing, that we've professionalized youth sports and we were excluding and we've kind of structured it so that less kids play. So.
Yeah, Jay, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole bringing in the national perspective, I think that could be kind of a selling point to having that local kind of overarching sport group, is that we could kind of filter some of that national stuff for all the local organizations, and make some clear guidelines and things like that. So I think that'd be a selling point is, hey, we can deal with the national stuff, bring it here, kind of see what everybody else is doing. And you guys just focus on making the organization work here in Kansas City, and we'll give you kind of some of the guidelines. I don't know. That's kind of what I was thinking, listening to that.
That's great.
So one question I had was, the word governing came up a couple times. So is that kind of what y'all perceive is the role of some central organizing body, is like governance, or is it something else in terms of just sharing information, advocating for priorities?
I think it's the latter. I don't think we can, I think we use the word governance, but I don't think, someone can disagree with me on this, but I don't see how, like, if we form a national or a Kansas City Youth Sports Alliance, I'll keep using this example, we're not going to have any actual authority over what, any particular club or association chooses to do with their sport. But I think we could make recommendations and drive awareness around in the same way that like HHS is doing that, in the same way that
Guidance. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's guidance.
Yeah, I just went back and reread the actual strategy, and it's, developing policies or something along that lines for promotion of sport as a vehicle for being active, and so that's within the strategy. That was kind of the limits they put on it, and we can adjust that as needed if people think it should be more or less than that. So I guess this is great conversation, and I think that from my perspective, this is exactly what we figure out next, and so maybe we can put a pin on this conversation right now and come back to it when we get to what's next for this work in just a few minutes. Yeah, Adrian.
No, I just wanted to end with this, just to kind of give you all an idea of how hard this work is. For the last 12 years, we've been a part of USA Football. I think you all know about USA Football, or just USA Youth Sports overall. And it's just regionally, let alone locally, it has been very hard, and I mean hard work, to get people to come to the table to look at USA as a quote unquote governance or guideline group. And then to get people to say, okay, well, you know, even though we run our own leagues, even though we do this, that, whatever, it's the after effects of it's the impact of finding those people that really want to take what USA is providing as far as coaches certifications, all the things that could really help our competitive football leagues be more safer and more better. The hard work is getting those coaches, getting those people who run those programs in a room to agree on anything. So I'm just putting that out there. This is great, but to get people to come to the table is hard work. And so what we've just done is, you know, 2 or 3 that come to the meetings, that's who we're going to work with. Because at the end of the day, there's this thing about mine. It's a crazy, I don't know about anybody else, any other sports, but for football, it seems that this is how I've been doing it. You know, we haven't really, no one's gotten hurt, no one's this, that, or whatever. But when you start talking about all of a sudden there seems to be some areas of turf. What am I looking for, Jessica? What word am I looking for?
Yeah, territory, like lanes, like this is my lane,
my
you see in your
God,
lane. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I mean, I love this because I think it gives credence to what we are wanting to do at KCPA. And I just wanted to plant that seed that probably whatever sport we're talking about, don't be disappointed if it starts out with 30 folks in the room and 2 weeks, then the next meeting or third meeting, you may be down to 2 groups, if that. So I just wanted to lay that out there for just so everybody could know. Can it be done? Should it be done? Yes. Is it hard work? Absolutely. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that gets back to, I think it was Bill that said it earlier, you know, incentives, what kind of incentives can you provide for people? I don't know what those are, but maybe that might help. But I'm sure people have tried that already too, though, so. Great. Excellent. Thanks for all that information. Jay, thanks for putting the Vanderbilt program in the chat. And, you know, this is something that we can talk about in next steps a little bit more, but Jay posted about just safe sports unification around issues or guidelines. And, you know, maybe that's the way is, you know, focusing on very specific aspects of regional sports, whether it's safety or whether it's space/facilities, whether it's officiating, something like that. Maybe that's something that can be talked about a little bit more later on. So, okay. Great. Why don't we move to reviewing what we've talked about for the past several months and the draft of the document that we're developing. So Bryce, if you stop sharing your screen and I'll take over here. So I think all of you have access to the Google Doc where we've been taking all of our notes. Bryce, can you throw the original Google Doc link into the chat?
Yep, can do.
Cool. In that document, on the very first page, I put a link to a second Google Doc, which is the draft version of the sports sector strategies and tactics. And so this is what I've got up right here. And Bryce, if you wouldn't mind dropping the link for this one in the chat as well. This is a document that we'll leave open for several weeks. So feel free to read through it and review it, make any comments or suggested edits to it in your time. We'll go through it right now and we'll take some real-time edits, but we know that you might want to sit on things for a little bit as well. So first, just a couple of disclaimers. This is very much a draft document. Some things are very straightforward and easy to report. There's probably not a lot of editing that will, or subjectiveness that goes into some of the pieces. You know, for example, the ratings of the strategies and tactics, that's all pretty straightforward. There are other pieces that were somewhat subjective as our group was drafting the document. And this is where we want your feedback on. And so we'll highlight those as we go through the document. Second, you know, this is just a Google Doc, so it's pretty ugly at the moment. We will eventually put this in the standard format of the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan. So we'll use all the same graphics, all the same design template, and I'll show you what, well, I guess I'll show you that right now. So that here is, you know, what our Kansas City Physical Activity Plan looks like. So this is the first edition. It was the edition that was released at the end of 2020, featuring the first 6 sectors. We will release a second edition that includes the sports sector and the mass media sector, and that'll happen in early 2022. The sports sector, we're completing our work right now. The mass media sector, they're just beginning their work. So they've got probably 3 months of work to catch up. So when they complete that work, then we'll update mass media and sports within the second edition of this document. But it will, the sports sector will follow the same design template as what we currently have in existence. So you can kind of see it. Our guide to the plan starts on page 14 of this document, and the sectors themselves start on page 15. So, you know, we'll have our little logo, we'll have our color. Our color is what is like a burgundy or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what the color is called, but it's that variation on red. It'll include an overview. It will include the strategies. It will include information on how the strategies and tactics were developed, the process, the feedback, surveys, and then once it gets through all of that background information, then it dives in to the specific strategies and their priority tactics. So here's strategy 1 for healthy schools, and here are the, looks like 3 priority tactics that were developed for strategy 1. And then you move on to strategy 2, and there are the 3 priority tactics that were developed for strategy 2, so on and so forth. There are some things that we may need to make some decisions on, though. For example, some, not all, but some of the sectors from the first edition created this moving forward section, which is includes things around the approach, their action-oriented steps that the work group has identified, and they're just simple 1-sentence bullets, 1-sentence action items. There's additional information for local leaders, so like organizations, that's what is considered under local leaders. Community involvement would be more along the lines of like parents and families or an individual. So here are steps for local leaders, and here are steps for families. So for example, providing no cost physical activity opportunities before and after school. That's what an organization should do. And communities could provide feedback back to their school wellness committee. So again, only some of the sectors did it. it was really up to the sector as to whether they wanted to do it or not. Let's see. I guess that's an overview of what the finalized plan would look like. Here is what we've developed so far. So at the start of the section on sports, we have, I think it's 3 or 4 paragraphs on why sports matter. What is the importance of sport in physical activity? And so there are a couple different points that are made. The first paragraph talks about the potential impact of sports for positive good. The second is the potential negative impacts of sports in terms of barriers to sports participation and particular challenges. For example, we included the COVID-19 pandemic drastically impacted sports participation for some, but not all participants. For example, the information we included was for families earning less than $99,000 a year, their sports participation, including competition, practices, and free play, decreased by 2.5 hours per week. Whereas for families making more than $100,000, it went up by about 1.2 hours per week. So disparities certainly exist. And then why we need a Kansas City sport physical activity plan. So that's kind of like the background on sports. Then there's a couple different, or one section with a couple different subheadings for the process, talking about the meetings that we held, the surveys that we completed, and some information on the Kansas City National Youth Sports Strategy Workshop that was held in July. Lots of great information there. And so we wanted to make sure we included that in our work as well. All of that is included in the appendix, and this is Appendix C is where that can be found. The next steps are what we do next. And so as I showed you, in some sectors, they chose to do their next steps in the form of approach local leaders, community organizations, and community, and like parents and families. We can easily adapt what we have written in this draft document to that type of format. To start out with, though, Bryce, Bill, Adrian, and I thought that this format maybe looked a little bit better, was a little bit more focused and succinct, as opposed to having this section separated out across all of the different strategies that we have. So at the moment, we are not using the format of moving forward approach, local leaders, and community involvement. Instead, we're using this. So these all would occur after each strategy. Instead, we're having one next step section that would apply to all the strategies. And so this is some discussion that we can have about the exact format of this section and how we want it to look. Additionally, we wanted to talk about what's actually included in this section. So at the moment, and admittedly, I came up with this based on my own perceptions. And so this is really my own thinking. 4 key items with additional sub-items. So one is around implementation of the strategies and tactics. Exactly how are we going to do that? And my thought was to merge the work from the National Youth Sports Strategy Framework for Understanding Sports Participation and our strategies and tactics. That hasn't been done, that merging hasn't been done, so that would be a next step, but that would be a framework for how to implement the strategies and tactics. And I'll kind of show you what that means, what that framework looks like here in Appendix D. So Appendix D, and this is kind of at the suggested guidance from the National Youth Sports team that we worked with for the Kansas City Summit. And now it's not in there. Where is it? I swear that I put them in before, but if not, I'll just pull it up right here. Sorry about that. Our sync didn't work for some reason. Oops.
Yeah, you can probably pull it up in the Word version too, Robin.
That's okay. I've got it right here.
Sweet.
So this is what was recommended as part of the National Youth Sports Framework. So you can see this is an ecological model. So it is a framework that addresses all the determinants of why, of how someone behaves and how they participate in things like sports. So there are interpersonal things, you know, how much a kid knows about a sports program. And there are things as you move up that are more policy related. So for example, legislation, the most common legislation would be Title IX legislation that's saying that there has to be equal opportunity for sports, for participation in sports. And so that obviously creates lots of opportunities specifically for girls and women to participate in sports. That's
And next year is the 50th anniversary of Title IX.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. The most successful physical activity policy that's ever been initiated, in my perspective.
Huge, huge
So,
deal.
yeah, exactly right. And so this is the framework that the National Youth Sports Strategy recommends. And as you look at some of the things that they've got in their boxes on the right-hand side, they align very well with the
Hey, Robin.
strategies that we're developing. Yes.
We're still on the other draft of the.
Oh, sorry.
doc. It's okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Sometimes it moves, the share moves with you, other times it doesn't. So here is, you can see that now.
Yep, looks good.
Yeah, so here's the framework from the National Youth Sports Strategy. So it addresses all of the determinants of why someone might participate in sports, ranging from the individual level, interpersonal, organizational, community, and public policy. So all the things that, as I mentioned, you see on the right are strategies, are related to the strategies that we've been talking about for the past several months. So I think in my perspective, it makes sense to kind of think about all of these things kind of together. And rather than just focusing on strategies that, you know, only focus on individual level, for example, or just policy, we need to really focus on every level of this framework. So that is what I mean there. Let me just go back and switch my screen again. Sorry for all the moving around here. Okay, so that was the first step. The next step is what to do with this group that we've got assembled here. And I just put down establish regular meetings of the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan Sports Sector. But that is really what I think we need to come to some sort of agreement on as a group as to what this group looks like going forward. As I've mentioned before, you guys are seeing my screen, right? The Google Doc. I hope. Okay, thank you. We really only ask for your participation through strategy development. And so we're at the end of that point. And so now we'll let you off the hook, and you can leave if you want, or we can decide what we want to do with this group going forward. Number 3 is expand engagement with other members of the regional sports sector. So we know that we've got good participation, good diverse participation in this group, but likewise today there's 9 of us, and we know that there are that's a drop in the bucket in terms of what this sector actually represents. So engaging with more people beyond this group. And then number 4 would be develop cross-sector collaboration with other societal sectors where it makes sense. And so that is a key principle of the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan, is cross-sector collaboration. So that might mean sports working with parks, sports working with schools, businesses working with sports for things like corporate challenge. You can see where cross-sector collaboration might exist. So this is where I think probably there's a lot of discussion that we can have at this group. We'll come back to that in just a second. And the last thing I'll show is just what the strategies and tactics looks like and the decisions that we have to make there. So the first is exactly what strategies to include. There are 8 total strategies in the national plan. And so we ranked all 8 of them. It is clear that 3 really kind of rose to the top, and 5 were kind of secondary. My suggestion to the group would be to continue to include all 8 strategies, just because we know that that everything is important, even though it may not be highly ranked, and we may be missing key parts of the sector in this group. And if we exclude something that might be a priority for one of those key stakeholders that's not currently here, and they want to get involved down the road, like in 6 months or something, and they don't see how this aligns with their interests, they may not be involved. And we learned this from the first 6 sectors that we did, where we didn't include some sectors, and a couple months later, some people came along and said, oh, well, I'd like to be involved, but I don't see where I fit. And they didn't see how they fit because we dropped strategies that might be related to them. So my suggestion would be to keep all of the strategies, but separate them by priority strategies and secondary strategies. And so here's how they're broken out, with the 3 strategy number 3, 4, and 7 being a priority and the others being secondary. Regardless, our policy or our formatting for the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan is to do all the strategies in numerical order for all sectors, meaning we're simply adding these strategies to the 22 that have already been developed across the other 6 sectors. So strategy 3 here would be renamed to strategy number 3. Strategy 4 here would be renamed to strategy number 4, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of our formatting guide for the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan. So we'll come back to decisions around priority and secondary strategies in just a second. But then the last thing I wanted to show you would be how we present the strategies in the document. So we start out by just listing the strategies, and that's it. And then we list the strategies, or we list them all together, excuse me. And then we get into the individual strategies. So strategy 7 was the top rated one. And so that was the one that we've got listed first here. Excuse me, it was the second one. I don't know where our other one went. Oh, here it is. Strategy 3 was the top rated one. That will become strategy number 23. And then we list all of the tactics for the strategy. Now, same thing applies to the rankings. Some tactics ranks higher than others. So do we drop the ones that were lower ranked or keep them? My preference would be to keep them all and just separate them by priority and secondary tactics, but we can discuss that as a group. So that continues for all of the strategies. You can scroll through, and then we'll get down to the appendix. And apologies here, I don't know why it didn't sync, but we've got in the appendix the results of the REDCap survey. In Appendix B, the result of all of our Mentimeters. Appendix C, the results of the sports strategy workshop. And then Appendix D would be the that socio-ecological framework that I created. Or excuse me, not that I created, that I showed you earlier. One side comment, I think we all participated in this July workshop summary. Did anybody get the workshop summary report? Anybody remember getting that?
The one from National Youth Sports Strategy.
Yeah.
I
You guys did get it?
I think we did.
Yeah,
Well,
we did. We got it a couple weeks ago.
I thought
okay,
so.
good. For some reason, I didn't get it. But I know that other people did. So in case you didn't get it, let's see, I thought I had it. Yeah, I've got it pulled up right here. I'll just show you what it looks like, and maybe it'll jog your memory. So here is the National Youth Sports Strategy Kansas City Virtual Workshop Summary Report. This is what it looks like. It's actually quite helpful or informative. It's got all of the information, all the notes from the breakout rooms. Here's the first word clouds that we did at the beginning and the end. And then there are the key findings from all the breakout rooms. There's links to all the mural boards that we worked on. And then there's tables that summarize all of the breakouts. So it's really quite good. I thought it was quite helpful. And we have permission to post this on the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan website. So once we get everything all developed, we'll have a link to that report in the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan, and you'll just click on it and it'll link to an embedded link on our website. So it'll be available for everyone there. So let's see. Sorry, just taking a look at the chat. So I guess some decisions that I think we can start working through. And maybe we'll start with some easy ones. And that is, what does the group think about inclusion of strategies? Any strong opinions about keeping all of the strategies and just separating them by the ones that ranked higher and lower? Or do you just want to include the 3 that were ranked the highest?
And Robin, while people are thinking about that, do you mind going up into, I think it's the blue button up in the upper right-hand corner, and just sharing the link to this Google Doc? I think the one that was in our previous document went to the same document. So I don't think people have access.
Maybe that's the problem here.
Maybe hit that drop down arrow in the upper right.
Yeah. Yep.
Sweet.
Just gotta...
I would just say that I think that we should include all of the strategies. Specifically, you know, I can think of some things that we can do as a group on some of those lower strategies that are just low-hanging fruit that I wouldn't want to miss not having them included as we have ideas and brainstorm ways to encourage people to use physical activity for the benefit of their life. And I think that it's just really important technology is one of them. That number 8, that just screams KC Crew and what they're trying to do. And to not have that in the strategy, I don't want to lose that powerful group that has the millennials targeted, that wants to move into helping kids connect with sports, rec sports, in a way that is unique and new and novel and can be really powerful for this city if they can pull it off. And if Luke Wade and his wife, that they can pull it off. So those are the kind of things I think that can be generated from those lower tiered strategies that I wouldn't want to miss out on.
Yeah, I think strategy 8's the perfect example of that, Bill. I know in our initial voting, it was kind of middle tier and towards the bottom, but I think we all knew that, as we progress to the future in recreational sports, youth sports, all these landscapes, that, technology is going to have to be at the forefront. So, and I guess that's a good context to keep in mind for, all of these strategies, if we decide to keep all of them, or if there's one that's, kind of on the edge of not being relevant for Kansas City at the moment. I'm thinking to the future as well, as different people come to the table and as we have, different priorities and action items in the city, will that strategy be more prevalent in the future? So that's a good context to keep in mind.
Yeah, I would just add that I think we need to err on the side of inclusivity and leaving them in here, because this is a small group of people, and it's been a small group of people for the last few calls. And we certainly do not represent everybody who's doing work in this sector. And so I think we have to leave them in there.
Great. Sounds pretty unanimous. So glad we're all in agreement there. I guess last chance to be an objection, to raise your objection. Yes. I did place the link to this document in the chat. Someone tell me if it's not working. Clearly we're having some Google Doc syncing issues today.
It asked me to send a request to admit in. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me try again once I move on to the next item. So I guess the same for tactics, right? We're in agreement that we should include all the tactics, same as before. Okay. All right, then next decision points would probably be around the next steps. And so this is something that I think we should really be thoughtful about, obviously. And so no need to make decisions today about what to include for next steps. But we can certainly have discussions around it right now. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen while I try to solve out this Google Doc issue. But any thoughts on next steps that may be either what I have listed regarding developing implementation, expanding engagement, developing cross-sector collaborations, and what to do with this particular group?
Which do you want us to tackle first, Robin? I think that those are a lot of topics.
Which one you want to start with? You can.
I mean,
pick. That link should work now, by the way.
Okay,
Sorry.
I was like going to try to look at the list again.
Yeah, here, I'll share my screen as well. Sorry about that, everybody.
So it feels like we should talk about what is going to happen with this group, and then we can figure out how to incorporate cross-sector collaboration. And I think if we can figure out, like, I think I'm speaking for everyone when I say this, but disagree with me, people, if you don't agree. Like, I would love for us, once we figure out the final formation of this document, to figure out if we're going to meet regularly, what does that look like, and what is the intended outcome? so that it is not just another meeting where we're like all coming to the call, just rattling off what we're doing, rather than actually doing something that is progressing forward.
You're exactly right, Jessica. I'll just give you a little bit of context to what the other KC physical activity plan sectors are doing, and maybe that'll help guide this discussion. And I guess one thing Bryce is going to work on in between now and when he sends out the meeting minutes is to create an anonymous REDCap survey. So we'll include that. So everybody on the distribution list will have it, and you can put in your anonymous thoughts on what this group looks like, because we know, people may not be here, or they may, we don't want certain people or ideas to dominate the conversation. So we'll send that out with the meeting minutes. So nothing has to be decided today. The other sectors all do something different. Some sectors have chosen not to continue to meet. Some sectors have chosen to meet in other existing groups. For example, I'll say the faith-based group, most of their work has happened through the Calvary Community Outreach Network. So they just meet within that existing set of meetings. So they are not meeting as part of the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan per se. Others, the healthcare sector, is quite novel. They meet quarterly, every 3 months, as a large group, and then in between, they have individual specific projects that they wanted to work on. So for example, they're trying to work on reimbursement codes for physical activity counseling. So they've got a group that just meets about that, and they're just doing that work. And it's very strategy focused. Others, the physical activity, the Parks and Recreation and the infrastructure group decided to merge their groups and have meetings, and they just use that mostly as a way to convene and touch base on a monthly basis. So really, the other sectors have all chosen very, very different and specific or sector specific next steps or meeting next steps to address their goals. Yes, Jay.
I mean, I'm on the healthcare sector group, but I really like that idea of kind of getting into smaller groups. I don't know how many people were originally in this group, but kind of we broke it down and we have like 5 different things to tackle. And I really like that idea, just because you can get maybe a little more stuff done in a quicker fashion with fewer people, and then come back to the group, once a quarter or a couple times a year, whatever, to kind of talk it over. If we think we can break our strategies out and people are willing to just kind of sort of be in charge of one, or 2 or 3 people be in charge of one. But, if everybody really wants to be involved in every single aspect, then obviously that doesn't work as well. I think we've all got unique talents, so we could probably filter those towards very specific parts of those strategies.
Thanks for that
Jay,
feedback. Yeah, go ahead, Bill. Sorry.
so I think there needs to be, we need to finalize this piece of this, what are our top 3 things we're doing, and what are we trying to get accomplished? We need to be able to articulate that really clearly within the small context of this group of people that are dedicated to this, call us early adopters or whatever. And I think we need to go recruit some of the right people for another introduction of what this is and what we're trying to do, so that we have the numbers to be able to split this out. We've lost a little bit of our membership group, just because this is the hardest part of this whole thing. This strategic plan, getting down to the tactical execution of your strategies that lead up to your objectives, is is always the most difficult piece of it. And it just kind of, I'm so proud of us that we're all here. And I really do honor everyone who's on this call today, but we're in the weeds of something that is, so much bigger than us. And there's so many great things for us to do once we get to this cross-sector collaborative piece that we can get to by early next year, I think. But I'd really like to have our next meeting be one where we all bring the right people to the table, introduce, clearly what it is we're trying to do, not have it so word intensive, have it a little higher level, but just really get our group together. And I'd like to invite Nick Garcia and, Shane Hackett and Jason Kaysen from YMCA and, Jamal Malone from Boys and Girls Club and, whoever from Operation Breakthrough and, Mariah from Global KC, or, all these people that are working with kids and doing the work, they need to be around the table with us. So anyway, that's just one of my initial thoughts here.
I mean, great points. And it's not really a surprise to me that this group has, kind of coalesced around, about 10 people or so, because it's in the weeds. You're exactly right. It's not particularly fun, and it's hard to get someone to buy into something if they don't know what exactly it's going to lead to. But the healthcare system is a good example of how during their planning process, their group was about this size, a 10-ish or so. And Shelley can maybe talk about this. And it has grown exponentially. Every time they meet, they've got more people coming because they're starting to see like, oh, other people are saying, oh, they're doing this great work. I want to be involved.
Right.
So
good. Well, that's what I want.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here for a little bit to give a background on the healthcare sector. We did the same process, identified the strategies and priorities for the healthcare sector. We did do exactly what you're recommending here. So even though we prioritized some of the strategies, we left in all the strategies for the healthcare sector, similar to how you all have recommended doing it for this as well. Because we do see the value of leaving it in there. So as we start doing work in these subgroups, other people that see themselves fitting in and being able to impact some of the lower priority strategies still see that they're important, and we can build on those when the time is right. These 3 subgroups align directly with our strategies, and we have found exactly what Robin was just saying, as we've been clear. So Jessica, to your point, as we've been clear with what we're doing, we have a purpose for the subgroups. They're working on something very specific. People are far more likely to get engaged because now you're doing something and there's going to be an end result. We're moving toward, I'm not saying it's going to go fast or we're going to do this really quickly, but we do know what we're working toward. And I think that has been really helpful as people on the committee or working in the sector ask other people to participate. They can be, a little bit more clear on what the ask is. And so we've seen that very successful. In fact, I just came back from vacation and I've got 3 emails of people who are sharing our work with other people and trying to connect them to this work because their health system wasn't already at the table and they think, oh, well, we should be there. Why are we not included in this when all these other health systems are? So again, just sort of building on what you're already saying and how breaking it down to different subgroups does help you move the work forward. Some people don't really like the strategy part or coming up with that. They're not as comfortable in that setting, but once you get down to the action plan, they feel a little bit more comfortable joining in.
great. Well, any other, I guess, I'll just go ahead, Adrian, sounds like you might have been ready to say
No,
something.
excuse me. If you know me by now, I'm a relationship guy. So I'm, you know, whether we've got 10 or whatever, I think we had talked about the possibility of bringing this group together as a group and do something like at Hy-Vee. I think we talked about that. Just getting this group together and maybe inviting some of the other sector groups and doing some fun sports, physical activities kind of stuff where they could bring their kids, they could bring whomever. And just since we are the sports strategy group, that what would that look like as we come together as a group and get to know each other, get to build some relationships, and maybe bring some people to that type of activity. That I mean, how could that help build this group up to say, okay, now when we get into the weeds, or as we, that word, the verbiage that I've heard, as we're getting into this tough work, I want to get into this tough work now because I'm building relationships and these people are serious. This sports sector group is serious about doing this work. So I just wanted to throw that out there because, like I said, I've been out with COVID for a little while, so maybe I missed what we got with that. But I'm just thinking that if this group could get together and do something like an exhale, like it ain't all serious, it ain't all just, you know, we're just here getting to know each other just a little bit. So I just want to throw that idea out there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, see, Jessica had to leave. So what I think maybe a good next step would be, like I said, Bryce is going to work on that survey and include it when he sends out the meeting minutes next week, so we can get feedback from people who maybe weren't here or didn't want to speak. And then maybe we try to schedule like, I don't want to schedule another meeting just to have another meeting, but maybe a November meeting just to kind of review what we talked about for next steps, and you know, kind of settle on an idea. And of course, you know, we can talk with Adrian and Bill, as you guys are the co-leads, for you know, what you think might be the next steps, and then that can set up, you know, what the format that we use going forward for these meetings in 2022. Does that sound okay, or are there any other suggested ways to handle this? I anticipate like a short meeting, like a 30-minute meeting, something like that.
Sounds good to me.
I think that makes sense, Robin. I think that's a great idea. What we found from some of the other sectors is bringing them back together with the final recommendations that are sort of free of the edits, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
has been helpful in the other sectors. So then they clearly see, what are your final strategies and what order are they in? What are your final priorities and what order are they in? And you can identify what your subgroups might be once you clearly have everything clean, if that makes sense. I found, just from our experience, that, you know, people shift from the editing piece to the, oh, now let's get into the action step piece.
Yeah.
And so I think I would probably recommend an hour, because as we all know, it's better to end a meeting early than to go later in the meeting. And so I think I'd encourage an hour, review those things, clearly identify what your subgroups are, and then ask people to join those different ones. And then also ask for them to share this information with other people in their, you know, in their, oh my gosh, I can't even think of the word, but in their groups, or, you know.
Yeah, in their area. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then you can set up, what are those next, what's our next meeting schedule? What's it going to look like? Does the big group meet every other month, short term, or quarterly? And then do the subgroups, or they meeting monthly? Jay can speak to whether or not he thought that was successful with the healthcare sector group, but it seems, from my perspective as the one getting the majority of the emails, that people have engaged quite a bit, shifting to that sort of plan.
Great. All right. Well, thanks everybody for your feedback on that. And I guess maybe I'm just looking at the clock. It's 2:13, and so maybe what we can do. Are there any other next steps or any other comments on the next steps that we have listed here? And again, you don't have to say anything now. This will remain open, and you can edit, put in comments in this document at any point over the next few weeks as we continue the editing process. I will just say that funding, as we all know, is incredibly important to carry on this work. And my experience trying to get funding from foundations and other granting agencies is they love to see frameworks and that will outline how whatever money you're seeking fits into a larger issue. And I think that that's why I think item number 1A listed there makes sense for me. Is it'll be helpful going forward with funding. If we can say, you know, our work from the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan with these sectors aligns with these other national level initiatives, and it's an approved and vetted framework. I think that carries some weight. So,
Nice. And I think we can probably touch or give an example on number 4 with cross-sector collaboration. I know you mentioned this the other day, Bill, but I think Bill has a good example of, you know, how we would bring up an idea of cross-sector collaboration. If you guys identify something that would make sense with another sector of the KCPA plan, or maybe a sector that's not even a part of the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan, developing a process for bringing that up to us and kind of coordinating our efforts. So Bill, if you wanted to touch a little bit on the idea that you had for that survey with
Sure.
the Healthy Schools group.
Yeah, so I got a message from a psychologist that had gotten a message from the physical education teacher at the high school that her daughter goes to. And she just said that there's a remarkable difference in the level of fitness that she's witnessing at the schools, and as she's working through these PE classes with her students. And I just thought immediately what a great opportunity it would be for us to do a internal survey of the school district's physical education and coaches throughout the city, asking them what they're finding in their work with their kids, and if this is something that is, you know, a universal issue across the city, and how valuable it would be if we had that information. And so I called Bryce to ask him, how do you think we should go about putting together a survey from the sports sector of this? And he said, well, the best way to do that would probably be to reach out to the school sector and talk to them. They have already done some things like this. This isn't the first rodeo. We know how to do this. And so, I think that's the example of coming up with something, just kind of just inspired little conversation I had anecdotally with someone. And then how do we get that evidence, of actual on, frontline evidence about what's happening with our kids and their lack of physical activity over the last 18 months.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. Yeah, and that's the benefit of having these groups, already in existence, is we can reach out to the school sector and do something like that. So,
Hey, Bill, can I ask a quick question on that? I'm asking because we just had our school sector meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they are sending out a survey. Are they noticing decreases in fitness?
Yes.
Because of the fitness testing that they're doing? Like, are they doing FitnessGram or whatever it is, and then they're seeing this, like sort of objective measure of fitness going down, or are they just observing students in PE class or in recess and thinking, good grief, they, don't want to move very much, or
I
do you know?
don't know the answer to that question. And it would, in trying to understand the problem, I have reached out to an athletic director to try to find out if, what the situation would be within their school district in terms of being able to, answer the question, are they less or more, is there a remarkable difference between their fitness this year as opposed to years in the past? It obviously would be a lot more valuable if it wasn't just their gut is telling them they're less physically fit, that they actually have some markers. They do fitness testing, I think, in Blue Valley and Shawnee Mission. I know those are the school districts that I'm talking about that probably have that kind of level of engagement. And I would think that the under-resourced communities would have less. I mean, because that's what we've come to find out, is that the well-resourced school districts have more and get more, and the students are better off because of that, and because physical activity is good for these students.
Yeah, Robin, do you remember where that data came from that you talked about initially in the process section of this document? Kind of aligns with this.
Yeah, the citation is there. I think that was from the Aspen.
The Aspen Institute. Yeah, I think it's the Aspen Institute.
It's their, they have a specific, the COVID Parenting Survey 3.
Gotcha.
And Gina Besseni, did I say her name? How do you pronounce her last name? Besseni? Yeah, she's going to present data along with a researcher from USC, along with Joey Leitner, on November 3rd around physical activity, exercise, and sports, and the impact it has on adolescent well-being. That I'm helping put together with Health and Human Services, and we'll have that invitation announcement early next week. That will go out. It is a public health forum that we're creating around the idea that movement is the medicine we need to reconnect our kids to better mental health. But that's kind of where this whole thing came from, was that these researchers are out there interested in this data, but I think a survey would actually help them understand the importance of trying to get at this information, as you said, Shelley, with real data, with real evidence.
Great. So I'm glad, I guess, I assume the connection has been made, right, to Healthy Schools, and you guys are all good to go there. Oh, Bill, you're muted.
I don't think it has been yet, but we're going to make that happen.
Well, we wanted to bring it here and talk about it first and make sure it was, yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Great.
So, yeah.
Well, luckily
Shelley,
you got Shelley here. You're
help
connected now.
If you like it, yeah, let's definitely not something that I know how to do. So, but I'm willing to try. And I do pay for SurveyMonkey, but I'd have never used it. So unfortunately, it just sits on the shelf waiting for me to do a survey.
Okay. Just because we're running short on our time here, and I wanted to leave time at the end for announcements and things like that. I guess the plan is to include, of course, this Google Doc in the meeting minutes that Bryce is going to send out next week. We'll leave it open for probably through the end of the month for people to submit any edits and revisions to it. And then in advance of a November meeting, we'll try to have, a kind of a final version for everyone to see, and then we can start finalizing what the next steps are for these groups based on the discussions today and what people might submit to this anonymous survey that we'll send out also next week. Any questions about any of that? Great. Well, now I want to open it up for any announcements that we might have. So I don't know if Bill, do you have more to share about your workshop?
I've sent the first draft to the designer. I'm waiting on the invitation to come back. It's basically called The Role of Physical Activity, Exercise, and Sports in Supporting Adolescent Well-Being. Movement is the Medicine. It's a public health forum on the current state of children's mental health, Wednesday, November 3rd. It starts at 10 a.m. It's a 90-minute problem, 45 minutes of the problem, 45 minutes of the solution. Our speaker lineup is made up of Dr. Catherine Satterwhite, Bridget Doe from USC, Joey Leitner from UMKC, Michelle Wimes will be speaking on the children's health concerns and that are compounded by racial injustice and structural inequality. And then a psychologist that is working with teens, Karen Montgomery, will begin the second section, which is the solution. Gina will present benefits of movement and outdoor physical activity. Then we'll have a physical fitness guru, Monty Nash, former Rockhurst High School. He's from California. He's an inventor and a fitness expert. He's going to talk about the power of movement and in physical activity on the life of a child. And then we're going to feature a student athlete that will share their story about what it's been like to be separated from sports during COVID. So super excited about it. I think it's really important. Children in our city have experienced isolation and depression due to the COVID restrictions. And I think there's a massive surge in mental health problems. There's one more speaker that we're trying to add. Her name is Emily Snow. She's with Blue Cross and Blue Shield. She's a behavioral health specialist. And what we'd like to do is present some of the current data on what's happening with behavioral health claims, just to kind of highlight that as part of the presentation. There's also on the back end of Movement is the Medicine is a walk on November 28th. Which is a mental health awareness walk. It's a Sunday after Thanksgiving, 10 o'clock in the morning. And I can put the link to the website. You guys can find out more about that if you're interested.
That's great. What time did you say on the 3rd?
10 o'clock.
10 to
11:30.
10 to 11.
45 minutes of the problem, 45 minutes of the solution.
Hey, Bill.
Yes, ma'am.
I hope you've seen our monthly email communication that goes out from Weighing In.
I do
Electronic
get it.
newsletter format.
Yes.
Our general plan is to send this out on the Mondays after the 15th, which would be this upcoming Monday. If you have that flyer done or approved, or even if you can just send all of that information in an email, we can have that included and sent to our distribution list early next week to help you get the word out on this. And that distribution
would be
list is
huge.
like 900 emails.
I'll bust ass to get it done.
Great. Super. We'll help you get the word out
Oh, well, that's
on
awesome.
both of them,
Thank you. Thank you.
the walk and the
Okay.
event. Okay.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can
and
put
of
in a
course-
recap of the sports sector as well.
Yeah, exactly right. So that'll come out next week. We got 3 minutes left, so I'll just paste something that I think you guys might be interested. I don't know anything about this other than it's put on a Project Play opening night. It's a 2-day. I think there's 2 days. There's the opening night, and there is the second day, and those are happening next Tuesday the 19th. Opening night is at 6 p.m. So it's an evening presentation for 1 hour. And then their finale presentations are Wednesday the 20th at, it looks like 2:30. They've got a really great lineup of speakers and breakout rooms. So sign up for that. It's free, so it doesn't cost you anything. let's see, a couple other things. Bill's thrown some things in the chat. Great.
Oh, I made a mistake the first time. The second time's the runner sign up, so.
Okay, great. Any other announcements?
Yeah, we're entering into our 5th week of competitive football. We've got over 45 cheerleaders out there doing their thing, and over 620 football players, K through 8th grade. So they're having a blast. We've had, from what I understand, we have one accident. Well, just playing football, it is what it is. But man, the kids are having a blast, and it's exciting. And so this has probably been our best year ever. So just to get that number of kids out and seeing the number of families out there screaming and hollering and running up and down the sidelines with their kids has been a ball. So we're just excited about that. Just keep us in your thoughts and prayers. Thanks.
Absolutely. And I did chain gang a couple weeks ago and had a great time. Okay, so our next scheduled meeting, I would propose to be Wednesday, November 17th.
Good.
I think technically we're scheduled, the pattern would fall on the week before, but I'm out that week at a training conference. So the 17th would work better for me. Great. All right. Well, with that, I think, we've wrapped up the 99% of the work for the strategies and tactics. Amazing job. And hats off to Bill and Adrian for your guidance on all this.
I couldn't have done it without you and Bryce and Shelley and the team. And like I said, I think it's really awesome that you guys stayed engaged and helped us get through this. It was the numbers are important.
Yeah, I echo that with Bill. I mean, we're just getting started. Momentum is slow, but as we start building momentum, we'll see this thing blow up. So kudos to everybody. And I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
It's going to be great in 10 years when we're sitting from the headquarters of the Kansas City Sports Alliance in downtown Kansas City and saying, remember back when we planned all this 10 years ago, and there are just a handful of us in a room, in a virtual room.
Just as long as I got a tube of Bengay, sounds like I may be all right, brother.
Sounds good. We'll have a masseuse. You'll have your own masseuse. All right. Thanks, everybody.
And you'll have 6,000 kids out for football, Pastor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. See ya.
See you guys. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks.
Incredible.